Sure why they asked us, because there are definitely people in town that know more about goats than we do, but we have had.
You answered the phone.
Kevin answered the phone. Kevin answered the phone and volunteered us and then said, you know, you're going to be doing most of that, and that's okay. I'm going to talk just a little bit about the two reasons that you would have goats. The first would be dairy goats, and there are several different kinds of goats that you can get, and basically what you need to do is just ask yourself what are you looking for in a goat? What quality of milk? How much milk do you want? What you're planning to do with that milk other than just drink it, if you're going to make cheese, cottage cheese. And something that I've learned about goat milk is it's predominantly, in most of the breeds that I've researched, the milk is it's homogenized, which means that the cream is already mixed in the milk. So unlike cow's milk, where the cream will rise to the top, goat's milk, in order to get the cream from goat's milk, you have to buy a cream separator. In all the reviews that have been written that I've looked into, those run about $120 and they're worthless. And so then you have to go to a commercial grade separator, and they're about $600 or $800. And I figure, you know what, I can live without butter from goat's milk. So, but you can make very good cheese, and my favorite thing to make is cottage cheese with the goat's milk that we have. It makes very good cottage cheese. So this handout will be on the website, but we'll look up here what kind of milk. If you want just a little bit of milk and you are just wanting to try goats for the fun of it, you've all seen the little pygmy Nigerian goats, and those would be a good start. They're easy. They don't produce a lot of milk, but they produce enough milk that you could at least kind of start looking at. The fat content in that milk is decent. Saanens are your best milk producers. It's Saanen, and they're big. Then they're also the biggest goat. They produce the best, the most milk. You could get upwards of 2 to 3 gallons of milk a day from a Saanen goat, but it's more like skim milk. It doesn't have a very high fat content. The Saanen milk that I have tasted was not really desirable, but I'm more of a whole milk, at least 2%, if not whole milk type person. But if you do like skim milk, a Saanen goat, and you want lots of milk, that would be the route to go. The other that are good milkers and all have about the same, you have an Alpine goat, the Toggenburg, the Nubian, and one that I'm not familiar with at all is the Oberhasli. I don't know how to say it. How do you say it? Oberhasli? Oberhasli. Anyway, I'm not familiar with those. And then you have La Mancha and the little Nigerians. In our dealings with goats, we've pretty much, well, Kevin years ago brought home goats from the Navajo reservation. Those just bred, and we ended up with 10 goats, and they ate the neighbors' everything and our and we had some missionaries come by one time, and I said, we need to stay out on the front porch, and those goats will jump on their car. And I know they looked at me and thought that's okay, we've never gotten that excuse before. And I said, no, really. And sure enough, here come the goats, and they jumped up on the car, and their eyes got all big. So, but they left really quick. We ultimately moved to town. That's when we lived a little bit out of town, and we brought some of those goats with us. We kept those goats on ropes and just let them eat. We didn't have any particular use for any of them. Predators ended up getting those goats. We had these. One had very long. What kind were they? Angoran. They were the goats, and these dogs stretched these goats clear out to the end of their rope and got the rope between their horns and ended up just suffocating them, and then just kind of ate them. And so we have the same problem in town with rabbits and chickens. You have that same problem with goats, is that predators will get into them, and we've actually had coyotes right up in our backyard that have gotten our dogs and chickens and everything else that we've had. So we have not I've spent a little bit of money on the current goats that we've had. So if you make an investment, you tend to take a little bit better care of them. So the goats that we currently have, we have a full-blooded Nubian, and a half Nubian, half Toggenburg. These goats we bought specifically to milk. And in the milking season, which is just getting ready to come upon us because they just had babies, but we bought these goats when they were in milk. You do have to milk them twice a day. As their milk production tapers off, they will go down to, then I just started milking them once a day. One of the goats got sick and her milk ended up getting blood in it, so we just quit milking them. So I'm not following these slides. If you want to go, and I should probably follow the slides a little better. So you're going to choose what brand that you want, which breed, and that's really going to be based on how much milk you want. The two goats that we currently have give about a half a gallon a day. So that's a gallon a day. The Nubians and Toggenburgs and Alpines have all been known, if you buy a good quality strain of them, they can give upwards of a gallon to 2 gallons a day. And so you do want to do your research. Those of you who are familiar at all with Georgianne, the goat lady that lives right across the street from Navapache down there in Springerville, she has a wealth of knowledge on goats. And she's happy to share any knowledge. She's happy to sell you goats. One thing that I did learn, though, is that you do really want to inspect your goats, because some of the goats, one of our goats does get cysts and stuff. She'll get cysts on her neck, and she gets them in her head, and they're really nasty. And you kind of have to be careful with those, because what happens is these cysts will break and they'll get in the ground, and then that bacteria stays in the ground, and then it just will continue to, the goats will just continue to get it. Some goats, my other goat she doesn't get the infection from it. She's impervious to it, but Jewel continues to get these cysts, and they're really nasty. So they also, one of the things that's common in this area is that they'll get a cough, and so some of the medicines that you want to have on hand if you have goats is you do want to, and we're terrible at this, but you do want to give them shots for, there's a disease, and I can't remember what it's called, but it's overeating, and they'll get an infection in their stomach, and so that's an inoculation that they get. Also, one of the things that they get around here is a cough, and that if you just have ivermectin on hand, which is a horse medicine, but you just put a little bit on the tip of your finger and slide it down the back of their cheek and wipe it off, then give that to them, then that'll help.
You can actually vaccinate them for that also.
Okay, and then you can vaccinate them for tetanus and the CT or CBT vaccine that you can get from any of the feed stores and vaccinate them. Kevin?
Just to kind of chime in on this, and maybe you're going to get to it in a bit, but I was real skeptical about goat's milk. Okay, my wife wanted goat's milk. I'm like, oh mercy. Okay, and I rolled my eyes. But in all honesty, I really enjoy the goat's milk. If we keep them on grain and good feed, I can't taste the difference. Some people can. If you let them out.
Between goat's milk and
Cow's milk.
Yeah, as far as having a taste.
Okay.
If we let them out to eat weeds, yeah, then you can definitely taste it. But if you keep them on good feed, no, I at this point would probably rather drink goat's milk.
We're pretty anxious for these goats. We have babies that we've got to give about 2 more weeks, and then we can start milking them.
And the other thing that she kind of already touched on, we've got the 2 goats, and we'll get better than a gallon a day out of those 2 goats, which is more than, so you're looking at 7 or 8, 9 gallons a week. We give it away because we can't use it all. We get a large supply built up, and she'll make cottage cheese and cheese, and all of it's been really good, especially coming from a real skeptic that, goat's milk. No, it's turned out to be a good thing.
So and Kevin hit on one thing. If you're going to buy milk goats, that you're not going to want them to be out eating be grazing. If you have low wethers, which are boys that have been castrated, those are called wethers. Then those would be the goats that you would want out in your fields, keeping things down if you wanted to have them as weed eaters. But if you're milk goats, you don't want to just let them eat anything, because just like a cow, your milk will taste whatever, like whatever they're eating. So we feed ours alfalfa hay, and we buy goat. There's a specific goat feed that Georgianne actually designed, and Nutrina has, it's a 70%, I think it's a 70% protein feed, and Dave up at the hay barn in Nutrioso carries that feed, and so we go up there and get a bunch and support him up there with that. And so that's what we feed him while we milk them. Any questions on dairy goats? Yes?
Is dairy goats, is that milk good enough or okay to feed a baby? If you had an emergency and you needed milk for a baby, could you feed goat's milk to a baby?
Well, my dad tells me that I was raised on goat's milk because my mother, I'm a twin, and my mother just about died when she had us, and so he had a goat and he milked it, and that's what we drank as babies. So yeah, you can. I know. It was the goat milk.
Yeah, actually, that's why we got our first dairy goat, was my 6-month-old. But I couldn't nurse anymore, and he didn't do well from this, we got a dairy goat. And that's
So it does have a lower content of lactose in it, and so people that are lactose intolerant can tolerate goat's milk much easier.
What's the expense of maintaining a goat?
It's right now it's a little bit more because we're just giving them as much feed as we can. But usually we have 4 horses too, so we'll give the horses a 4 to 6 inch flake per horse, and we'll give the goats about a 2-inch flake for all the goats, and so it's minimal. And then the grain costs, I think I figured it out one time, and it was about $1 a day. And so we figured if we were getting a gallon of milk a day for $1, that it was worth it. They're very low maintenance. The main thing that you need to do, and here again we don't do very well, is keep their feet trimmed. But you can do that easily. Elwin Browning shoes our horses, so when he comes and shoes the horses, I have him trim the goat's feet occasionally. The gestation period is 5 months, and they come into heat in the fall. And you can either have a billy on hand, which we don't have, or Georgianne has a billy, and she's pretty good to the whole town uses her billy. And we it just goes from one place to the next. She had a little honey buck that was full-blooded Nubian that we used this year. We're getting babies from her. I know Rocky Adair is getting babies from that buck. And he was only 7 months old, and so really pretty buck. Fencing, you do want to, like everything else has been said, you want to make sure that you have them secure, and you want to make sure you have a secure, even a more secure place to keep them at night, so that you can really lock them up, especially when there's babies. They make a lot of noise. Nubians are known to be the noisiest. They really cry. They just make noise. Our Nubian has something wrong with his voice box, and she doesn't make very much noise, but the babies do. It doesn't bother me. It's far enough out that we can. Oh, and another thing, goats are herd animals, and so you do not want to buy just one goat, or that they will be very noisy in that case. If you have horses or sheep or something else, they will kind of acclimate themselves to that herd. We had one goat for a while, and it just hung out with the horses. As long as the horses were around, then it was fine. But if you only you definitely want to buy 2 goats. If you don't want 2 milk goats, then buy a milk goat and a wethers, or just so that you'll always have 2 because they definitely make more noise if they're alone. Now meat goats, I don't know anything about meat goats, but I did print off some information, so that'll be on the website. But there are some specific breeds that are better for meat. The Boer goat is typically the better meat goat, and Nubians can also be crossed with Boers and make good meat goats also. I figure we have enough elk and deer in our freezer. I'm not going to eat a goat until I absolutely have to. And so when there's no more elk and deer or antelope on the mountain, then I might eat a goat. But anyway, any other questions? Sorry, I didn't use much of the slide presentation, but there are good information
All of it
on
will
that.
be on the
Yeah,
website.
so that you can go to the website and look up more the information. But if you do have any questions, you can call us. Rocky Adair probably knows more about goats, and Georgianne definitely. She used to run a goat dairy, and so she really has good information. But All right, thank you.
Yeah.